I am Darcy. And I never imagined my sister's theatrical gasp would be the sweetest sound I'd ever hear at a family reunion. But before I tell you how I turned Vanessa's carefully orchestrated humiliation into the most satisfying moment of my life, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe. You'll want to see how this ends. Growing up as Vanessa Montgomery's younger sister meant living in a perpetual shadow, not of accomplishment, but of spectacle. While I balanced budgets and invested my babysitting money at 14, Vanessa was hosting poolside parties funded by maxed-out credit cards. Where I found joy in compound interest calculations, she found followers on Instagram by flaunting designer bags she couldn't afford. The family ate it up. Vanessa knows how to live, they'd crow, while shooting pitying glances at me hunched over my laptop, tracking expense spreadsheets. My passion for financial discipline started early, sparked by watching my grandmother lose her home because she'd never learned to manage money. I made a promise at her nursing home bedside that I'd never be financially vulnerable. But to my family, this translated to being that weird cheap girl who won't even spring for Starbucks. They had cute nicknames for Vanessa: our little socialite, the life of the party, future real housewife. For me, Penny Pincher Darcy, the calculator, or my personal favorite from Uncle Morton, walking savings account. The thing about being consistently underestimated is that it gives you incredible freedom to build in silence. While Vanessa performed wealth she didn't have, I was quietly constructing actual wealth nobody knew about. She'd roll up to family dinners in leased luxury cars, draped in borrowed jewelry, regaling everyone with tales of yacht parties and ski trips sponsored by her rotating cast of sugar daddies. Meanwhile, I'd arrive in my reliable Honda Civic, wearing the same black dress I'd owned for 5 years, contributing my homemade potato salad to the potluck. "Darcy, sweetheart," Aunt Beatrice would coo with that special brand of condescension reserved for family disappointments. "Are you still doing that? What is it? Bookkeeping thing?" She'd wave her hand dismissively before I could correct her. I wasn't doing bookkeeping. I was building a financial consulting firm from my studio apartment, but why bother explaining? They'd already decided my story. The comparisons were constant and cruel. "Look at Vanessa's new extensions," Mom would gush, while suggesting I might want to do something with my perpetually bunned hair. "Vanessa just got back from Mykonos," Dad would announce, before asking if I'd considered that maybe I was too focused on money and missing out on life. The irony wasn't lost on me. They celebrated Vanessa's lifestyle funded by debt and delusion while dismissing my actual financial success as sad and small. Every family gathering followed the same script. Vanessa would sweep in late, immediately commanding center stage with some dramatic story about her latest adventure or acquisition. The family would orbit around her like planets around the sun, hanging on every word about her investments. Translation: pyramid schemes, or her business ventures. Translation: being an influencer with 3,000 bot followers. Then someone would remember I existed and throw me a bone. "And how's our little saver doing? Still clipping coupons?" The Christmas of 2019 perfectly captured our family dynamic. Vanessa had just announced her engagement to husband number 2, a flashy real estate agent named Blaine who wore too much cologne and called everyone champ. The living room erupted in squeals and champagne toasts while I sat in the corner having just closed my first 6-figure client. But who cared about boring business contracts when Vanessa was flashing a ring she'd later admit she'd helped pick out and pay for? "Show us the ring again," Mom demanded for the dozenth time, while Vanessa performed her well-rehearsed surprise face. The ring was massive, ostentatious, and probably cubic zirconia, but the family treated it like the Hope Diamond. Meanwhile, I'd just paid off my student loans 5 years early, but when I'd mentioned it at dinner, Dad had literally yawned. "That's nice, dear. Vanessa, tell us more about the wedding venue." The pattern stretched back years. High school graduation, Vanessa got a party for scraping by with C's because she worked so hard to pass, while my valedictorian status earned a pat on the head. College, Vanessa dropping out of 3 different schools to find herself, was a brave journey of self-discovery, while my full scholarship to study finance was playing it too safe. Every milestone of mine was background noise to Vanessa's symphony of drama. Thanksgiving 2021 was particularly brutal. I'd just landed a contract with a Fortune 500 company, a deal that would set me up for life if I played it right. I was bursting to share the news, waiting for a lull in Vanessa's monologue about her latest MLM venture selling essential oils. When I finally got a word in, Cousin Patricia actually shushed me. "Darcy, please, Vanessa's telling us about her journey to become a platinum-level wellness warrior." I watched my family lean in, captivated by Vanessa's explanation of how diffusing lavender had changed her life and could change theirs too, for just $499 to start. My aunt bought a starter kit on the spot. My own mother signed up to host a party. Meanwhile, my news, actual legitimate business success, withered and died in my throat. "That's nice about your little contract," Uncle Morton had said, already turning back to Vanessa. "But have you heard about the healing properties of eucalyptus?" The birthdays were exercises in contrast. Vanessa's parties were events, themed extravaganzas she couldn't afford but threw anyway, complete with professional photographers to document every moment for social media. My birthdays? Oh, Darcy won't mind if we keep it simple. She doesn't like frivolous spending anyway. One year they forgot entirely, remembering only when I brought my own cake to Sunday dinner. But perhaps the most telling moment was Mom's 60th birthday dinner. Vanessa gave her a gift certificate for a spa weekend that I later discovered was just a printed piece of paper. The actual booking never materialized. She'd spent the money on hair extensions instead. But Mom displayed that worthless paper on the fridge for months, gushing about Vanessa's thoughtfulness. I'd given Mom a fully funded retirement account contribution, maximizing her tax benefits. Her response? "Oh, Darcy, always so practical." The family photo albums told the story better than words. Vanessa centered in every shot, radiant and demanding attention. Me, slightly out of focus on the edges, holding everyone's coats. At my cousin's wedding, Vanessa wasn't even in the wedding party but somehow ended up in more official photos than the bride. I was a bridesmaid but got cropped out of the social media posts because Vanessa said my energy didn't match the vibe. By year 3, I wasn't just consulting, I was investing. Every successful client became a potential investment opportunity. I took equity stakes in 12 women-owned businesses, all of which tripled in value within 2 years. My portfolio grew from 5 figures to 7 like compound interest on steroids. But I kept living in the same apartment, driving the same car, wearing the same clothes. Why? Because stealth wealth is the best wealth, and I'd learned that my family's validation was worthless currency. The numbers were staggering. My consulting firm hit $3 million in annual revenue. My investment portfolio crossed $8 million. I had passive income streams generating more monthly than Vanessa spent yearly on her facade. But I told no one. Not when Mom lamented my lack of ambition at Easter. Not when Dad offered to loan me money for a more reliable car at Thanksgiving. Not when Vanessa loudly suggested I try her latest pyramid scheme because even you could probably sell a few oils, Darcy. I incorporated in Delaware for privacy, ran everything through LLCs, and kept my name off public records. While Vanessa was tagging luxury brands she couldn't afford on Instagram, I was quietly closing deals that would fund my grandchildren's grandchildren. The discipline that my family mocked. Tracking every penny, analyzing every investment, living below my means, had built an empire they couldn't even imagine. The sweetest part was the strategic positioning. I studied wealth psychology, learned from old money families who whispered instead of shouted about their assets. I diversified internationally, hedged against inflation, built redundancies into my revenue streams. My financial fortress could weather any storm, while Vanessa's house of cards needed constant performance to stay standing. She was exhausting herself maintaining an image. I was building generational wealth in my pajamas. The lake house had been calling to me for years. Willowbrook Manor, a sprawling estate on Crystal Lake that Vanessa posted about constantly, declaring it her dream home and future manifesting. She'd even done a vision board photo shoot in front of its gates. What she didn't know was that I'd been in talks with the elderly owner for 6 months, negotiating a private sale. He liked that I planned to preserve its historic character instead of turning it into what he called new money nonsense. 3 weeks before the family reunion, I closed on Willowbrook Manor for $2.3 million cash. No mortgage, no co-signers, no drama, just a wire transfer and a handshake. The title company agent did a double take when she saw my age. "All cash at 32? She'd asked. I just smiled. The deed went straight into my safe, waiting for the perfect moment. The morning of the reunion, I sat in my home office, still in the same modest apartment, the irony not lost on me, reviewing the contract that would change everything. TechCrunch had leaked news of the acquisition talks, but thankfully, my name was buried in corporate speak. One of my earliest investments, a sustainable fashion platform I'd backed when it was 2 women and a dream, was being acquired by Amazon for $400 million. My 15% stake would net me $60 million before taxes. The paperwork would be final Monday morning. I closed my laptop and stared at the invitation on my desk. The Montgomery family reunion, hosted at Vanessa's new rental, a gaudy McMansion she'd been pretending to own on social media. The gold embossed card screamed desperation, just like everything else in Vanessa's life. But Mom had called 3 times, guilt-tripping me about family obligations and how everyone's worried about me. Translation: Vanessa needed an audience for whatever performance she'd planned. My phone buzzed with a text from Garrett, my CFO, and one of the few people who knew my full situation. "You sure you want to go to this thing? You could be in Cabo instead." He was right. I could be anywhere. My passport had more stamps than Vanessa had fake designer bags, though my family thought I'd never left the state. Business class to Tokyo, private villas in Tuscany, financial conferences in Switzerland, all carefully undocumented on social media. I'd learned to find humor in the disconnect. Last month, Vanessa had posted about manifesting abundance while doing a sponsored post for a meditation app that probably paid her $50. The same day, I'd quietly donated $100,000 to fund financial literacy programs in our hometown. She performed wealth. I practiced it. But today felt different. Maybe it was the impending Amazon deal, or maybe I was just tired of being the family punchline. I pulled out my standard reunion outfit: black slacks, simple blouse, sensible flats. The same uniform that had earned me years of "Darcy, don't you want to look nice for once?" comments. In my closet hung $50,000 worth of clothes from Paris and Milan, gifts from grateful clients and careful investment in timeless pieces. But the family didn't need to see those. They wouldn't understand the difference between Vanessa's Canal Street knockoffs and my authentic Chanel anyway. The group chat had been pinging all week, Vanessa orchestrating excitement, dropping hints about big announcements and surprise revelations, cousin Patricia speculating about another engagement, Uncle Morton hoping for free investment advice he'd ignore, and buried in the noise Vanessa's targeted jabs: "Hope Darcy can make it. I know gas prices are high." And, "Should we all chip in for Darcy's meal? Times are tough." I knew something was planned. Vanessa's social media had been suspiciously focused on financial wellness lately, complete with screenshots of investment apps and captions about building empires. She'd even started a YouTube channel called Wealthy Woman Wisdom, where she gave advice on topics she Googled 5 minutes before filming. The timing wasn't coincidental. She was positioning herself for something. My lawyer had called yesterday with an odd question. "Someone's been trying to pull public records on your LLCs. Any idea who?" I had a pretty good guess. Vanessa's new boyfriend worked at a bank, probably thought he could dig up dirt on my finances. What he'd found instead were shell companies and privacy structures that would make a Swiss banker proud. Still, it meant she was hunting for something. I made myself a cup of coffee. Good coffee, the $30 per pound kind I bought directly from a small Colombian farm I'd helped finance, and thought about canceling. I could claim a client emergency, send apologies, avoid whatever trap was being set. But something in me had shifted. Maybe it was the deed to Willowbrook Manor sitting in my safe. Maybe it was the 8 figures about to hit my account. Or maybe I was just done being the family ghost. The final straw came in a voicemail from Mom that morning. "Darcy, sweetie, Vanessa mentioned you might be going through some financial difficulties. We're all family here. No judgment, just come." The fake concern in her voice, clearly coached by Vanessa, made my decision. They wanted to stage an intervention for their fiction. Fine, I'd give them a show they'd never forget. I pulled into the circular driveway of Vanessa's rental McMansion at exactly 2 p.m., parking my Honda between Uncle Morton's leased BMW and Cousin Patricia's Range Rover that I knew was 2 payments behind. The house was everything I expected: oversized, understyled, and screaming new money that wasn't actually there. Vanessa had strung up a banner: Montgomery family, living our best lives. The irony was thick enough to choke on. Before I could even ring the doorbell, Vanessa flung open the door in a designer dress that still had the tags tucked in, a trick she'd perfected for returning items after photos. "Darcy," she squealed, air-kissing me while whispering, "Cute that you wore your interview outfit to a party." Her eyes scanned me like a predator cataloging weakness. "Everyone's been so worried about you." The foyer opened to a great room where the family had assembled like a tribunal. Mom rushed over, her face a mask of practiced concern. "Oh, sweetheart, you look tired. Are you eating enough? I know things have been difficult," she said, difficult the way people say terminal, with that particular pitch of pity reserved for lost causes. "I'm fine, Mom. Business is actually—" "Of course it is," Vanessa interrupted, steering me toward the crowd. "Darcy's always fine, so brave, so resilient," she announced to the room. "Everyone, Darcy made it. See, I told you she'd come even though—" She trailed off dramatically, letting imaginations fill the blank. Aunt Beatrice descended first, clutching her wineglass like a weapon. "Darcy, darling, we've been talking about you." Never a good sign. "Morton's son just started at Goldman Sachs. Maybe he could help you find something more stable? I know your little home business thing hasn't really taken off." "I appreciate the thought, but pride comes before the fall," Uncle Morton interjected, already 3 whiskeys deep. "Nothing wrong with admitting when something isn't working. That's what family's for." He clapped my shoulder with the condescension of a man who'd inherited his success and mistaken it for earned wisdom. The interrogation came in waves. Cousin Patricia cornered me by the shrimp tower, grocery store shrimp arranged to look expensive. "So are you still doing that bookkeeping thing?" My hairdresser's looking for someone cheap to do her taxes. When I explained I ran a financial consulting firm, not a tax prep service, she patted my hand. "Of course you do, sweetie. Good for you for staying positive." Vanessa circled like a shark, dropping breadcrumbs of humiliation. "Darcy, I set up a little workspace in the den if you need to check your, what do you call them, client emails. I know every penny counts when you're hustling." She said hustling like it was a disease. "Oh, and don't worry about contributing to dinner. We've got you covered." The assumptions came fast and brutal. Aunt Margaret pulled me aside to discreetly offer her daughter's old clothes. "They're barely worn and very professional, perfect for someone trying to project success on a budget." Cousin Bradley loudly explained cryptocurrency to me like I was 5, despite the fact I'd been trading Bitcoin since 2013. "It's probably too volatile for your situation," he concluded, "but maybe someday when you're more stable." The photos were the worst part. Vanessa insisted on family pictures, positioning me on the edges, always slightly out of focus. "Darcy, could you hold everyone's purses? You're so good at managing things." Click. "Darcy, squeeze in there. No, further back, we need to see Vanessa's dress." Click. "Oh, that one's blurry of Darcy. Well, we got enough good ones." Throughout it all, Vanessa kept weaving a narrative. "Darcy's always been so good with numbers. Remember when she'd count her Halloween candy?" Laughs. "She actually used to charge us interest in Monopoly." More laughs. "Some things never change. Still pinching pennies, aren't you, sis?" Each story reframed my strengths as quirks, my success as struggle. The final twist of the knife came from Dad, who'd been quiet until now. He pulled me aside with that serious father face that preceded all his worst advice. "Princess, there's no shame in moving back home for a while. Your room's still there. Take some time to figure things out." The assumption that I needed figuring out, that my life was a problem to be solved, burned worse than all Vanessa's barbs combined. Vanessa clinked her champagne flute with a butter knife, the universal signal for a toast that everyone knew would be anything but celebratory. "Family, gather round. I have something important to share." Her voice dripped with false concern as she positioned herself at the marble fireplace like a prosecutor ready for closing arguments. "This is really hard for me, but secrets hurt families." The room arranged itself into an amphitheater of anticipation. Mom perched on the love seat, already dabbing at her eyes. Uncle Morton refilled his whiskey. Cousin Patricia whipped out her phone, ready to document whatever drama was about to unfold. I found myself pushed to the center, a reluctant star in Vanessa's production. As you all know, Vanessa began, I've been studying financial wellness. She held up her phone, showing her YouTube channel with its 847 subscribers. And sometimes when you're educated about these things, you notice patterns. Troubling patterns. Her eyes found mine with practiced sorrow, especially when it comes to family. She produced a manila folder, an actual folder like this was a boardroom presentation. I didn't want to believe it, but when someone you love is struggling, silence is complicity. She opened the folder with the gravity of someone revealing state secrets. Darcy has been lying to us, to all of us. The room collectively inhaled. Mom's hand flew to her chest. Vanessa, what are you talking about? I'm talking about bankruptcy, Mom. Foreclosure, tax liens. Each word dropped like a bomb. Our Darcy isn't just struggling, she's financially destroyed. Vanessa pulled out papers, waving them like evidence. Public records don't lie, 3 credit cards in default, an eviction notice, and this. She held up what looked like an official document, a court summons for unpaid business loans. I almost laughed. The documents were so obviously fabricated. Wrong fonts, my name misspelled, addresses I'd never lived at. But the family gasped in horror, leaning in to see the proof of my destruction. Vanessa had probably spent hours on Canva creating this fiction, and they were swallowing it whole. How much? Uncle Morton demanded, suddenly the financial expert. How much does she owe? Vanessa's pause was theatrical perfection. At least 200,000. Maybe more. The paper trail gets worse the deeper you dig. She turned to me with crocodile tears. Darcy, why didn't you tell us? We could have helped before it got this bad. This explains so much, Aunt Beatrice whispered loudly. The same clothes, that old car, always saying she's too busy to join us for vacations. The stress must be unbearable, Cousin Patricia added, already crafting her gossip narrative. No wonder she looks so tired. Dad stood up, his face a mixture of disappointment and determination. How long has this been going on? And don't lie to us anymore, Darcy. We deserve the truth. The truth they deserved. Rich. They'd never wanted my truth. The late nights building something real, the strategic sacrifices, the compound growth of discipline. They wanted Vanessa's truth. Dramatic, digestible, confirming all their biases about my sad little life. I had Brandon pull some strings at the bank, Vanessa continued, gesturing to her boyfriend who looked uncomfortable but trapped. It's worse than just debt. Her business doesn't exist. There's no LLC, no tax ID, nothing. She's been pretending this whole time. Now that was interesting. Brandon's incompetent search had missed my Delaware incorporations, my series of LLCs, my international holdings. He'd probably Googled Darcy Montgomery business and called it research. But his failure was Vanessa's ammunition. And she was unloading every round. We need to have a family meeting about this, Mom declared, fully buying into the crisis. Darcy, you're family, but you've been lying to us. That hurts more than any financial problem. Which brings me to the hard part, Vanessa said, as if destroying my reputation had been the easy part. We can't enable this behavior anymore. The lying, the pretending, the proud poverty act while drowning in debt. It's toxic. She looked around the room, gathering support. I propose we practice tough love. No more family dinners where she pretends everything's fine. No more holidays where we all walk on eggshells about her situation. Are you suggesting we cut her off? Aunt Margaret asked, scandalized but intrigued. I'm suggesting we stop enabling the delusion, Vanessa replied, every word rehearsed. Until Darcy admits her failures and accepts help, real help, not more lies, maybe some distance would be healthy, for everyone. The vote was swift and unanimous. My financial ruin, completely fabricated, had finally given them permission to do what they'd always wanted. Exclude the disappointing daughter who made them uncomfortable with her choices. As they discussed my intervention like I wasn't standing right there, my phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer. Amazon deal closed early. Congratulations on your $60 million. The family intervention was reaching peak melodrama when my phone rang. Not buzzed, rang. I'd forgotten to silence it in my amazement at Vanessa's performance. The ringtone cut through Uncle Morton's lecture about financial responsibility like a siren. Everyone turned to stare as I fumbled for the device, Vanessa's eyes lighting up with new ammunition. "Oh, please take it," she said sweetly. "Maybe it's a debt collector. They can be so persistent when you're dodging them." I glanced at the screen. Rebecca Chen, Senior VP at Amazon Corporate Development, the woman who'd been handling the acquisition. My finger hovered over decline, but something in Vanessa's smirk made me answer. "I need to take this," I said, standing. "Of course you do," Vanessa stage whispered. "Everyone, give her some privacy. These calls can be embarrassing." I started toward the den, but Rebecca's voice boomed through the speaker. I'd accidentally hit speakerphone in my fumbling. "Darcy, congratulations. I know we said Monday, but legal pushed it through. The wire just hit. $60 million as discussed. You're officially one of the youngest self-made multimillionaires in the country." The silence was so complete I could hear the grandfather clock in the foyer. Every face in the room had frozen mid-expression. Vanessa's smirk half-formed, Mom's pity paused, Uncle Morton's whiskey suspended halfway to his lips. I tried to lower the volume, but Rebecca was on a roll. "The Times wants to do a profile piece on women in tech investing. I told them about your story, starting with nothing, building financial feminist consulting into a powerhouse, then pivoting to venture capital. They're calling you the stealth wealth wonder. Can we set something up next week?" "Rebecca, Oh, and Jack from Sequoia called. He wants to discuss that Series B round for the sustainable packaging company you sourced. He's thinking $100 million valuation. You always find the best deals. Anyway, I'm interrupting your Saturday. Celebrate. You've earned it. $60 million. God, I love saying that number." She hung up. The speakerphone fell silent. I stood there, phone in hand, watching my family's worldview shatter in real time. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The manila folder of fake documents slipped from her fingers, scattering across the Italian marble she'd bragged about all afternoon. "That was," Dad started, then stopped, unable to process. "A prank call," Vanessa whispered, but even she didn't believe it. Her face had gone pale under her spray tan. "Someone's playing a cruel joke." My phone rang again. This time I saw it was Charles Williams, my private banker. Against my better judgment, or maybe because of it, I answered on speaker again. "Ms. Montgomery, I apologize for calling on the weekend, but with a transfer of this size I wanted to personally confirm receipt. $60 million has been deposited into your account. Per your standing instructions, I've already allocated $10 million to your charitable foundation and set aside $15 million for tax obligations. The remaining $35 million is in your money market pending your investment instructions." "Thank you, Charles. We'll talk Monday." "Of course. And Darcy, congratulations. It's been an honor watching you build this empire. Enjoy your weekend." The second call broke whatever spell held the room. Uncle Morton's whiskey glass slipped, shattering on the marble. The sound triggered an avalanche of reactions. Mom sank into the couch. Cousin Patricia's phone clattered to the floor, her Instagram story abandoned. Aunt Beatrice clutched her pearls so hard I thought they'd break. But Vanessa was the masterpiece. Her carefully constructed superiority crumbled like wet sand. The fake documents scattered around her feet looked like what they were: pathetic forgeries, a mean girl's art project. Her designer dress with the tucked-in tags suddenly looked exactly as fake as it was. Every lie she'd told about her own success contrasted against the truth of mine. 60, she breathed, unable to finish the number. Million. Brandon supplied helpfully, his banker brain doing the math. That's serious money. Like, buy a yacht with cash money." "Several yachts," I corrected quietly, "though I prefer real estate. Speaking of which." I reached into my purse, fingers finding the document I'd brought just in case. The weight of the moment made my hands steady as I unfolded the deed. "Vanessa, you know how you've always loved Willowbrook Manor? That beautiful lake house you do vision boards about?" Her face went from pale to translucent. She knew. Before I even said it, she knew. "You didn't." Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. Her hands shook as I smoothed out the deed on her rented coffee table, the official seal of the county recorder's office catching the light. "Willowbrook Manor. You couldn't have." "Closed 3 weeks ago," I said simply. "Cash purchase, no contingencies. The owner even knocked off $200,000 because I promised to restore the original gardens. He remembered you, actually. Said you'd shown up twice trying to lowball him with offers you couldn't finance. The room erupted. Not with congratulations, but with the desperate energy of people recalculating their entire worldview. Mom found her voice first, switching from pity to practiced warmth so fast it could have given her whiplash. Darcy, sweetheart. We had no idea. Why didn't you tell us about your success? $60 million, Uncle Morton repeated, his financial advisor brain finally engaging. From one deal, that means your portfolio must be worth. He trailed off, unable to fathom the math. Much more, I confirmed, watching Vanessa sink into a chair, her performance forgotten. But you weren't interested in my portfolio when you thought I was counting pennies. You weren't curious about my business when you assumed it was failing. You only want details now that there's a number too big to mock. That's not fair, Aunt Beatrice protested, but her eyes were already calculating. We've always supported you. Supported me? I laughed, and it wasn't a kind sound. Patricia, what did you call my business an hour ago? My little bookkeeping thing? Morton, you offered to have your son get me a job because mine wasn't stable. Mom, Dad, you offered me my childhood bedroom because you assumed I needed saving. We were trying to help, Dad said weakly. No, you were trying to fit me into a story that made you comfortable. Poor Darcy, the penny pincher. Sad Darcy, missing out on life. Delusional Darcy, pretending to have a business. I gestured to Vanessa's scattered papers. You were so ready to believe I was bankrupt that you didn't even verify the documents. My name is spelled wrong on half of them. Vanessa finally spoke, her voice cracking. This is cruel. You let me think. You let all of us think. I let you think exactly what you wanted to think. I wore the same clothes, drove the same car, lived the same life while building something real. You decided that meant failure. I just didn't correct you. I picked up one of her fake foreclosure notices. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was malicious. How long? Mom asked. How long have you been rich? Define rich. When I hit my first million? 4 years ago. When my company reached 8-figure revenue? 2 years ago. When my investment portfolio became generational wealth? Last year. I watched their faces process each timeline. Every family dinner where you mocked my frugality, I could have bought the restaurant. Every vacation you assumed I couldn't afford, I was choosing to invest instead. Every single time you pitied me, I was building an empire you couldn't even imagine. Brandon cleared his throat. The LLCs, I couldn't find them because Delaware Incorporation, Nevada Holdings, international diversification. Real money moves quietly, Brandon. It doesn't pose on Instagram or brag at dinner parties. I looked at Vanessa. It doesn't need to fake documents to tear others down because it's too busy building things up. The power shift was palpable. Relatives who'd spent years dismissing me suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. The aunt who'd offered me old clothes was studying her hands. The uncle who'd lectured me about financial responsibility looked like he'd swallowed glass. And Vanessa had shrunk into herself, her big reveal turned into her biggest humiliation. So what now? Cousin Patricia asked, probably already crafting a new narrative where she'd always believed in me. Are you going to, family is family, right? I stood, tucking the deed back into my purse. Family is family? Was family family when you voted to cut me off 5 minutes ago? When you were planning my intervention? When you spent years making me the punchline to every joke? Darcy, please, Mom started, reaching for me. We made mistakes, but nothing. You showed me exactly who you are. More importantly, you showed me who I'm not. I looked around the room one last time, memorizing their faces. I'm not someone who needs your approval anymore. I'm not someone who'll shrink to make you comfortable. And I'm definitely not someone who'll forget this moment. I headed for the door, my sensible flats clicking on marble that would never be paid off. Behind me, the room exploded with voices. Accusations, excuses, desperate relationship math. But I didn't turn around. $60 million had bought me many things. The most valuable? The freedom to walk away from people who only saw my worth when it had enough zeros. I drove straight from Vanessa's rental mansion to Willowbrook Manor, my hands steady on the wheel despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. 20 minutes of tree-lined roads, and then there it was, my lake house, golden in the late afternoon sun. But it wasn't empty. 3 cars sat in the circular drive: Marcus's Tesla, Sarah's vintage Bronco, and Elise's practical Prius. My real family had assembled without being asked. Sarah burst through the front door before I could even park, her red hair flying. We saw Vanessa's Instagram story before she deleted it. Marcus has been refreshing every 10 seconds. Did you really just destroy her with receipts? Please tell me someone got video. Marcus appeared behind her, holding a bottle of champagne worth more than Vanessa's fake engagement ring. Garrett called. Said the Amazon deal closed early and you might need either celebration or bail money after today. We came prepared for both. He grinned, his designer hoodie a stark contrast to the suits my blood relatives wore like armor. Inside, Willowbrook Manor was exactly what I'd envisioned. Not the sterile perfection of Vanessa's rental, but warm woods and restored details, sunlight streaming through original stained glass. Elise had already set up in the kitchen. Because of course she had. "I'm making your favorite," she called out. "That ridiculously complicated Thai dish you taught me. And before you ask, yes, I already donated today's catering fees to the shelter." These were my people. Sarah, who'd been my first client when everyone said women couldn't scale tech companies. She'd trusted me with her last $50K and was now worth $30 million. Marcus, the brilliant coder who'd become my business partner, building the tech infrastructure that made my consulting firm unstoppable. Elise, who'd started as a broke culinary student I'd advised pro bono, and now owned 3 restaurants. "So," Sarah said, popping the champagne with expert precision, "tell us everything. Start with Vanessa's face when she realized her poor sister could buy and sell her fake life 1,000 times over." We gathered in the living room. Original hardwood floors, stone fireplace, views of the lake that looked like a postcard. I told them about the fake documents, the family tribunal, the perfectly timed phone calls. Marcus actually fell off the couch laughing when I got to the part about Brandon's incompetent financial sleuthing. "He searched for the wrong state," Marcus wheezed. "Your 12-year-old intern could have done better research. Did he even try looking at Delaware?" The best part, I continued, was watching them scramble to rewrite history. Suddenly Aunt Beatrice always knew I was special. Uncle Morton wanted to discuss investment strategies. Mom discovered she'd been supportive all along. "Classic," Elise said, distributing plates of food that smelled like heaven. "Success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. Where were they when you were sleeping 3 hours a night building this empire?" That was the thing about chosen family. They'd seen the ugly parts. Sarah had been there when I'd sobbed over my first major client loss. Marcus had talked me off the ledge when a deal fell through and I thought I'd lose everything. Elise had fed me when I forgot to eat for days during tax season. They'd witnessed the grinding, thankless work that my blood relatives had dismissed as sad workaholism. "Remember your first office?" Sarah asked, raising her glass. "That closet-sized room with the broken air conditioning? You mean my executive suite?" I laughed. I told clients it was a temperature endurance test for serious entrepreneurs only. "Remember when you tried to live on $30 a week to prove a point about financial discipline?" Marcus added. "And we staged an intervention because you looked like a Victorian ghost?" "You made spreadsheets about the nutritional value of ramen," Elise accused. "I've never been so offended as a chef." These stories were different from my family's mockery. These were shared memories of struggle and triumph, told with love instead of judgment. They'd never asked me to be smaller to make them comfortable. They'd pushed me to be bigger, better, bolder. "So what's next?" Sarah asked as the sun set over the lake, painting everything gold. "Now that you've officially burned that bridge to ash?" I looked around at my real family, in my real home, living my real life. Now I build something even bigger. The foundation is expanding. I'm funding a full scholarship program for first-generation female entrepreneurs, and this place, I gestured to the manor, it's going to host retreats for women building their own empires, safe space to dream without judgment. To chosen family, Marcus raised his glass, and to Darcy, who proved that the best revenge isn't living well, it's living so well that your haters' fake documents look even more pathetic. We toasted as the lake reflected the sunset, and I felt something I'd never felt at a Montgomery family gathering: home. The text messages started before I'd even finished breakfast the next morning. My phone buzzed like an angry hive as I sat on the dock behind Willowbrook Manor, coffee in hand, watching the mist rise off Crystal Lake. 47 messages, 12 missed calls, 3 voicemails I'd delete without listening. The Montgomery family had discovered my number still worked and were testing it with the desperation of lottery players checking tickets. Mom. Darcy, sweetie, I think we need to talk about yesterday's misunderstandings. Vanessa. You humiliated me in my own home. The least you could do is answer. Uncle Morton, interesting portfolio strategy. Would love your thoughts on my retirement allocations. Girl. I always knew you were destined for greatness. Coffee soon? I screenshot each message, not for posterity but for my attorney. Garrett had already warned me about the shift that comes with visible wealth. They'll rewrite history, he'd said. Document everything. Smart man. By 9 a.m., Vanessa had pivoted from angry to entrepreneurial, sending a business proposal for a sister-focused lifestyle brand. The ask was buried on page 3, a modest $2 million seed investment. The boundaries needed to be surgical and absolute. I started with a family-wide email, CCing my lawyer for good measure. Dear Montgomery family, yesterday's events require clarity moving forward. Please note the following. Any business proposals should be directed to my investment firm's official channels. Family connection guarantees no special consideration. Financial discussions are off-limits at any future family gatherings I might attend. My charitable foundation accepts grant applications quarterly. Personal requests for money will be ignored. Willowbrook Manor is not available for family events, photo shoots, or drop-by visits. My financial status is not for public discussion or social media content. These boundaries are non-negotiable. Respect them, and we might rebuild something. Violate them, and we won't. The response was immediate and predictable. Dad called me harsh. Mom texted about forgiveness. Vanessa posted a vague Instagram story about toxic people and energy vampires. But it was her DM that revealed her true state. You think you're better than us now? Money doesn't change blood. You'll always be my pathetic little sister playing with spreadsheets. I forwarded it to my lawyer with a note. Please add Miss Vanessa Montgomery to the cease and desist list if she continues harassment. The real test came Thursday when Vanessa showed up at my office. My actual office, not the home setup she'd imagined. 22nd floor, glass walls, my company name in subtle bronze letters. She dressed for war, designer everything, probably maxed out another credit card for the occasion. Security called up, and I could have had her removed. Instead, I decided to set the boundary in person. She swept into my office like she owned it, then stopped short at the view. Downtown stretched below us, the lake visible in the distance. My assistant offered her water in crystal that cost more than her handbag. The power dynamic shift was visible in her posture. Nice space, she managed. Very. You? It's functional, I replied, not getting up from my desk. You have 10 minutes. Use them wisely. She launched into a pitch about sisterhood and second chances, about how my success could elevate the whole family. The words were honey, but her eyes were calculating square footage and commission potential. When she finally got to her ask, not just investment, but a position in my company, I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Vanessa, I finally said, you spent decades telling everyone I was a failure. You crafted elaborate lies to humiliate me in front of our family. You tried to stage an intervention for fictional bankruptcy, and now you want a job. I was trying to help. Stop. You were trying to destroy me for sport. The answer is no, to everything, forever. I stood, signaling the end. Security will escort you out. Don't come back. Her mask finally cracked completely. You can't just cut me off. I'm your sister. Biology doesn't grant access to my bank account or my life. You taught me that when you tried to exile me from the family. I pressed the security button. Goodbye, Vanessa. As security led her out, she turned for one last shot. You'll regret this. Family is everything. You're right, I called after her. That's why I chose a better one. The boundaries held. Some relatives respected them and slowly earned limited access back into my life. Others, like Vanessa, raged against them until they exhausted themselves. But the beautiful thing about boundaries backed by resources, they're remarkably effective. My money hadn't changed who I was, but it had given me the power to decide who deserved proximity to my life. The Willowbrook Manor conference room filled with nervous energy as 12 young women settled into leather chairs that probably cost more than their cars. First cohort of the Montgomery Foundation's Female Founders Fellowship, though I'd fought tooth and nail to keep my last name off it, eventually accepting that irony had its own power. These weren't trust fund babies playing startup. These were fighters, scrapers, women who reminded me of myself before the money, when hunger was fuel and rejection was breakfast. Anyone else terrified? A voice piped up from the corner. Aisha, 22, building a fintech solution for immigrant communities. She'd pitched me in a coffee shop bathroom because she couldn't afford conference fees. That kind of hustle earned automatic admission. Terrified is good, I told them, settling into my seat. Comfortable people don't change the world. Scared people with nothing to lose were dangerous. This was my real legacy, not the number in my bank account or the house on the lake, but these faces looking back at me with the same desperate ambition I'd. Each woman had been selected not for their connections or polish, but for that indefinable quality that separated builders from dreamers. They'd all been told no enough times to wallpaper their apartments. Let's start with truth, I continued. How many of you have been told your business idea is too niche, too ambitious, or my personal favorite, too aggressive for a woman? Every hand went up. Of course they did. Good. Those are the ideas that make millions. Markets everyone understands are already saturated. We're here to build what others can't even imagine yet. I pulled up the projector, showing a slide of my first business plan. This was rejected by 47 investors. They said financial consulting for women was unnecessary because husbands handle that. Those same investors now beg me to take their calls. We dove into the work. Not inspirational fluff, but real tactics. How to structure equity to maintain control. Why Delaware incorporation mattered. The difference between venture capital that helps and vultures that harvest. I shared everything, the mistakes that had cost me hundreds of thousands, the negotiations where I'd left millions on the table, the moments when ego had almost tanked everything. Question, Keisha interrupted, her healthcare startup already gaining traction. How do you handle family who suddenly want in once you succeed? The room laughed, but it was tinged with recognition. These women knew the weight of being the first, the different, the one who didn't follow the script. You document everything, I said, thinking of Vanessa's latest attempt to trademark our shared surname for a beauty line. You set boundaries like they're load-bearing walls, and you remember that DNA doesn't determine who deserves to benefit from your sacrifice. 6 months into the program, the results were staggering. Aisha's fintech had processed its first million in transactions. Keisha had partnered with 3 major hospitals. Tamara's sustainable fashion line had been featured in Vogue. Each success was a repudiation of every dismissive comment, every patronizing pat on the head, every suggestion to think smaller. The scholarship program ran parallel. Full rides to state schools for first-generation college students from our hometown. No essay contests about overcoming adversity, just pure merit and financial need. The first recipient was Vanessa's hairdresser's daughter, a brilliant kid who'd been destined for community college until my foundation intervened. The irony was delicious. But the moment that crystallized everything came during our 3rd cohort graduation. Patricia Chen, no relation to Rebecca, stood at the podium, 25 years old, with 2 exits already under her belt, thanking me for showing her that wealth wasn't about looking rich, but building rich. In the audience I spotted Mom. She'd started attending these events uninvited, but respectfully, sitting in the back, watching me mentor the daughters she'd never thought I could be. After Patricia's speech, she approached cautiously. These girls, she said quietly, they look at you like you hung the moon. They look at me like I see them, I corrected. Like their ambitions aren't too big, but maybe not big enough. Like their dreams deserve capital and respect, not condescension and compromise. She flinched at the subtext but nodded. I'm proud of what you're building. I'm not building it for your pride, I said gently but firmly. I'm building it for them. For every girl who's told she's too much or not enough. For everyone who's made to feel small for thinking big. The foundation's endowment had hit $50 million. The fellowship had funded 47 companies. The scholarship program had sent 68 kids to college. None of it carried the Montgomery name the way Vanessa had always craved. Instead, it carried Montgomery values, the ones I'd chosen, not inherited. The legacy I'd built, not been born into. The morning of my 35th birthday, I woke up in Willowbrook Manor to absolute silence. No alarm demanding attention, no phone buzzing with crises, just the lake stretching endlessly beyond my windows and steam rising from coffee I'd learned to drink slowly. Success, I'd discovered, wasn't just the freedom to buy anything, it was the freedom to need nothing from anyone. I padded barefoot through rooms that had witnessed a century of other people's dreams before becoming mine. The library where the original owner had written poetry nobody read. The sunroom where his wife had painted watercolors nobody bought. They'd died, thinking themselves failures, never knowing their creative spirits had soaked into these walls, waiting for someone who understood that wealth meant nothing without the courage to live authentically. My phone sat silent on the kitchen counter. 5 years ago, a quiet birthday would have meant I was forgotten, unimportant, invisible. Now it meant I'd trained everyone, blood family, chosen family, business associates, to respect that this day was mine. No surprise parties like Vanessa would have thrown for herself, desperate for witnesses to her existence. No guilty obligation dinners with relatives mentally calculating my net worth between courses. Just me, the lake, and a revelation that had taken 35 years to arrive. I'd spent so long proving my worth to people who couldn't see it, that I'd almost missed the moment when their opinion stopped mattering entirely. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vanessa's attempted humiliation had been the catalyst for my freedom. Her theatrical reveal of my fictional bankruptcy had forced me to reveal my actual abundance. But somewhere between that family reunion and this quiet morning, I'd realized the money was just a number. The real transformation was internal. I thought about her sometimes, usually when her latest scheme crossed my desk through legal channels. The lifestyle brand had failed, the YouTube channel abandoned. The lake house she'd coveted now hosted my foundation retreats while she'd downsized to a studio apartment, still performing wealth on Instagram with rented designer goods and carefully angled photos. She'd learned nothing, still mistaking appearance for achievement, noise for significance. But I'd learned everything. That discipline wasn't deprivation but devotion to future freedom. That stealth wealth protected you from vampires who confused your success with their opportunity. That the family you choose trumps the family you're given. That building quietly while others broadcast creates a foundation that can't be shaken by someone else's jealousy or judgment. Sarah called around noon, respecting my morning solitude. "Birthday girl, Marcus is threatening to buy you a yacht as a joke. I told him you'd just turn it into a floating foundation office." "Don't give me ideas," I laughed, but we both knew I preferred my money working rather than floating. The compound interest of impact, whether through the fellowship or scholarships, gave me more satisfaction than any luxury purchase. "Dinner tonight at Elise's new place?" Sarah asked. "Just the core crew. No speeches, no surprises, no Instagram posts, just friends and that ridiculous chocolate cake you pretend not to love." This was wealth. Choosing your company, your celebrations, your definitions of success. Not needing to document joy because you were too busy living it. Not requiring external validation because internal peace had become unshakable. I agreed to dinner and spent the afternoon on the dock, feet in the water, reading proposals from the fellowship's newest cohort. Each business plan represented a woman refusing to think small, refusing to apologize for ambition, refusing to shrink for anyone's comfort. They were building the future while others debated whether they deserved to try. As sunset approached, painting Willowbrook Manor gold, I thought about that family reunion 5 years ago. How Vanessa's cruelty had accidentally freed me from seeking approval I'd never receive. How their disownment had been a gift wrapped in garbage. How sometimes the best thing people can do for you is show you exactly who they are, so you can choose who you want to be in response. My phone buzzed once, a text from Mom. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. I hope you're living your best life." For the first time, I believed she meant it. Not the performance of best life that Vanessa chased, but the real thing. aligned values, chosen family, meaningful work, and the revolutionary act of needing nothing from anyone who'd proven they deserved nothing from me. I texted back, I am. And for the first time in 35 years, I meant it completely. Have you ever noticed how the people who claim to love you most can be the ones working hardest to keep you small? If you're watching this, chances are you've got your own Vanessa, someone who needs you to fail so their mediocrity feels like success. Maybe it's a family member who mocks your ambition, a friend who sabotages your progress, a partner who dims your light because it makes their darkness too obvious. Here's what I learned in that lake house, building something they said was impossible. Your worth isn't determined by their validation. Your success isn't diminished by their doubt, and their attempt to humiliate you might just be the push you needed to finally show them and yourself what you're truly capable of. The comments are open, and I want to hear from you. What's your version of the lake house? What dream are you building while others are busy doubting? Who's your chosen family that sees your vision when blood relatives are blind? Share your story, because someone else needs to hear that they're not crazy for wanting more, for building quietly, for refusing to shrink. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's building something so magnificent that their opinion becomes irrelevant. Remember, they laughed at your discipline until it bought your dreams. They mocked your ambition until it built your empire. They dismissed your journey until your destination made them speechless. Keep building. The view from your own lake house, literal or metaphorical, is worth every moment they made you feel worthless. Your peace is coming, and when it arrives, you'll realize it was never about them anyway. It was always about becoming who you were meant to be.